Hello, this is Deborah Anderson, the Black Woman Animator, coming back to you with another video. And in this video, I have Ed Bell. Welcome.
Welcome. Ed Bell is my name.
Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Ed Bell, I'm an animator and artist illustrator. I generally work for smaller independent houses, but my whole kind of growing up and training was in the LA studio system.
Mm-hmm.
And I currently direct a show for PBS.
Nice.
All
So
right.
you're from LA. How was it growing up? What's your origin story?
All right. So LA is a big, diverse place, and it has all these periods that kind of like you can mark it, in time. And my growing up time, like I kind of came of age during what was called the Rampart Police era of Los Angeles. And when that police chief stepped down and was drummed out of town, it was over at that point, and it kind of shifted gears a little bit. But I was growing up in a kind of a dramatically difficult time for Los Angeles, especially East and South Central Los Angeles. They were before the '92 riot uprising. The conditions that were being endured by people were pretty intense, and a lot of that stuff has been forgotten, but sort of pre-OJ, pre-riot and stuff. But it was partly that there was a kind of a corruption at the base of our police. So even local policing was feeling it. And we had we had to kind of come up and grow and just be kids and, have our fun and enjoy ourselves and, become our whatever nerd selves or, or scholar academic selves like my brother or through sort of under those conditions.
Yeah.
And so, I kind of came up through, I went to Palisades High School. So I got to spend a few years, at least 3 years at a more mixed school where there was a lot more diversity and, found some opportunities there to use my art in different ways. So getting into photography for the school paper, getting into art for some of the programs that were there and some of the contests and stuff like that, doing painting, and building and sculpting and whatnot. Man, when I was a young person, I saw things like we visited the Henson Company in Santa Monica, where Jim Henson, the great like Muppeteer, was doing all their work on The Dark Crystal.
Nice.
It's one of this big fantasy, with all these sort of Baroque kind of styles and everything going on in it, with huge puppets and sort of practical effects and things going on. Man, I was sold. I was like, I got to work in this. I got to do something in this field right here. Whether you're bringing like visions to life somehow. And I worked on art. I kept that in my head when I applied to art schools after high school. I did okay. I did all right in school. I was kind of an average student, but I tended to get people focused on me for music and art often. So I would get invited to do the recitals for piano, which I was learning, and then I'd get invited to do any program to do with art. So that kind of kept me in a positive space with school. And a lot of my counselors recommended CalArts when I was getting close to finishing. So my mom took me up there to check it out. We saw they had a music conservatory. Found out my half brother, my older brother, was doing his music training there, and he was learning how to play the bassoon and the flute for like orchestras. And so I realized that I didn't realize that CalArts had this whole music academy there, where with world music and jazz and people learning how to do the blues and like Thai drumming and all, stuff from all over the world. And after my application, I went around and tried to apply to all the other art schools around the West Coast, just in case. But I got into CalArts, despite, I didn't know if I was ready based on my portfolio. If you were to look at it, you go, this dude's not ready. But they let me in there, and and I got a lot of support there, and I was able to kind of choose an area of animation that fit me the best while I was there. And I just wanted to become a character animator and help directors and filmmakers kind of bring their, put their vision together and maybe bring it to life. So if some great like artists had characters that they created and they had them all dreamed up in their head, I wanted to be the one to help kind of put them on paper, so to speak, and put them on screen and kind of make their motion and make their presence on screen feel like it had some life to it,
Yeah.
And this was during a time when animation, what was coming out and what I could see on television was kind of it wasn't a lot of very imaginative kind of stuff. It was shows like He-Man, Masters of the Universe was probably the most like imaginative thing that was on. But there was a lot of children's programming, really big at that time. So there was a lot of like from Muppet Babies to Kissy Fur to to the Hair Bear, to the Berenstain Bears, and there seemed to be a lot of bears going on in the late mid '80s. It seemed to be a lot
Care
of that.
Bears.
Yeah, anything that was squeezy and huggable, and anything you could like. Strawberry Shortcake was a big one. So that was kind of like where I was kind of leading when I started out in animation, because what I didn't say was it was during CalArts that we were working on these jobs. It was at the tail end of junior and senior year that we were working, basically going part-time and going down to LA and working on professional animation while we were trying to get our graduation, trying to finish our school. A lot of us were doing that.
So you're a multi-dimensional artist because you're a former LA street dancer. You like sing, you compose, you like make costumes. Like you just love all the art.
Yeah, I think I kind of grew up like getting exposed to a lot of different arts by people who wanted to show us kids their interests, and I had musicians in my family, not professional, but mostly I'd say amateur, but there was a community around LA where if you're an amateur, then you probably had churches you could sing at on weekends. You most likely you had like, events, synagogue events, Catholic masses, different types of celebrations where you would be invited to sing. My mom was like that. She was a soprano, and she could do quite a bit of. She played a pretty mean violin, and and she had an accompanist on the piano who regularly worked with her. So I kind of grew up with them rehearsing their stuff at home, and on a small baby grand, or no, actually ours was like one of those pianos that kind of sits against the wall, and like right in our entryway as you came in our place. And so we kind of grew up with that, knowing that she was kind of doing that semi-professionally, and she'd basically given up the whole like traveling with music career to become a mom, to be a full-time mom. And she ended up with 5 kids. But so she had a kind of a nice stimulating, amateur career, to work with alongside of her teaching. And I guess as far as like, like her and her colleagues were real into things like theater and the arts and stuff. And they would take us out to, Echo Park or out to, Rialto or wherever a small show was going on, like a Peter Pan would be playing here, or, or something, some play from South America that we had never heard of, but it had music and costumes in it and all kinds of, maybe it showed something about like another culture that we weren't part of, and that kind of stuff fascinated me, So I got into history in school too, I got into from an early age. I got into, like, well, what's it like in other lives that I haven't lived, and that's always been I've been drawn to that for a long time, ever since I was a kid. So they encouraged us to try to do any outlet, especially as younger boys, like my two brothers and I, but all of us, like the girls too, we were considered like the more things we could get into that was like dance or that was like, art or even sports was like the positive side of, of for them of like of LA kid culture, because they knew that we had to have something to do to avoid all the negative things.
Right.
So they made us, they got us pretty solidly into like the arts and got a lot of support for us and people who would kind of massage our egos, the coach, the teacher, the recital coach or whatever, to help us stay in it. And, and I was happy to be like saddled into or, sunk into kind of arts culture, because I was a shy kid who didn't want to, very much avoiding conflict everywhere I went, trying to be a people pleaser, trying to make the peace wherever I went to. And so I needed to be in places where I could kind of have like a creative outlet, or I would feel a little, I felt kind of out of place otherwise, I didn't really know what to say. And until I discovered track, I didn't really have any sports that I liked. So, so early on, I think I ended up being a little more, I was a little bit of a recluse for about 6 years, around 11, I got real insulated inside myself, and friends would have to come over and hang because I didn't really want to go anywhere, Turned out later I was a little depressed, but you don't really know about those things at the time,
Right.
Once by the time I got to high school, I was kind of out of that phase again. I was back to, just being like a regular, just kind of, more less afraid of people. Let's put it that way, but between like 11 and say 16, I saw a lot of the streets start to seem a lot more dangerous and a lot less predictable, like I needed some predictability in my life to be able to to pursue my nerd like interests and my, like the things I was obsessed with, which might be some small thing about like I said, about the Hensons and how they made certain effects and stuff like that, or monsters, from the MGM or Universal monsters. And I was always obsessed with like that, like, oh, how did they do the Wolfman? Can I do that myself? What would what would I need to do that? And so I could get on a bus and go around LA. My mom would let me do it, just go around myself and find the shops, use the yellow pages, find things to help me find materials that I needed for my projects and bring those things home. And she knew that would give me a certain amount of like experience that was good for me. And other than that, I mean, as long as I wasn't like running around with the other dudes, the other boys on the block who weren't up to any good on the weekends, he was happy for me to do whatever, and once my brother.
Considering all this, like, what were some of your best childhood memories?
Oh, well, best memories, I can say, that. Let me see. Well, let me get something specific. I mean, in general, I want to say family life itself, like our bonds within our household, and at the time I wasn't, I don't know if I would have said it, but our regular, just the kind of the ceremonies that a family has for their in their regular mundane life, you know,
Right.
the dinners, the gatherings, you know, especially when families invited over, even if distant cousins or whatever. But my mom liked to make the house kind of a meeting place for familiar and strange. And she kept it open. I mean, there was times when we would like, you know, harbor cats who, you know, who were on the shady side of life, but just because she knew them since they were 6 and just because they were 18 and in trouble didn't mean she wasn't going to protect them, you know, like seeing how she kind of she made her house kind of an open door, you know, for anyone who was friendly, you know, to us and who needed it and just needed company, you know. And so a lot of my best memories are, since I've lost my mom, you know, since a lot of my best memories are seeing her and learning from her on how she kind of built community around her, you know, and invited community and you know, because her family kind of got broken when my dad took off. He you know, he was in trouble because he'd been doing too much, and before they got divorced. And you know, I was probably only 4 or 5, but the police were coming asking questions because, you know, the relatives, everybody else in the family was saying, well, he's kind of rough, you know, like Doyle Senior's kind of rough. So at that time, it was like, okay, you know, women and moms weren't believed very often when they were being, you know, when they were complaining about domestic issues. And so they had a lot of leeway. So he used that window to kind of get away. He basically left LA. And while they were still looking for him, he took off and was able to avoid some of the state of California was also saying, hey, you have some money to pay your family. They owe you. So he spent years and years being chased around by them and escaping that responsibility. The way she kind of rebuilt things, because she had to kind of like pull stuff together and like, you know, create new sets of friends, you know, and in her 30s, you know, and make the household like comfortable again and make it feel like a single family unit again, you know. And I know that was a struggle for her, but her successes in doing that, like the way the household that we ended up with, that was like, yeah, we're injured, but we're not broken kind of thing. That's very profound for me and it taught me a lot of like, it gave me like a lot of like a positive core to come from whenever I had adversity, you know, like whenever I was met with challenges and I was, you know, something that I felt like I couldn't overcome, you know, that rebuilding of like the structure of the family and like making, you know, and the invitation of like, here, what are other good people that I can bring in, like good men that I can bring in to be examples for these young men, and good women that I can bring in to be examples for these young women. And, you know, like she knew that she and her mom weren't enough, you know, they were raising us, but we needed the whole community, you know, and she did a lot to like make that the case. And I would say like the arts were real happy times, like weekends with piano were awesome. I mean, I remember those as being like, I'm very happy when I remember like classes with Mrs. Heaney, you know, or recitals that I was like at the time real nervous about and real like upset and just extra. But when we did it, you know, it felt like such an achievement. And when I you know got through it, and the pride that your parents feel for you, grandparents feel for you, and that kind of thing. It makes those stand out for me, you know, in memory. Other than that, I mean, my sister and brother, my younger sister, I have 2 sisters and 2 brothers, and 2 of them are closer to my generation, so younger, and 2 of them are quite a bit older. They're from a previous marriage. Okay. The younger ones are funny and can be ridiculous, and they're also like real clever, like way smarter than me. So their humor was always like something that made me think and made me, you know, a little funnier, a little smarter. You know, like those two, they live in different places now, and we don't get to see each other very often, but they definitely made me a funnier, like more cohesive person, a more well-rounded person, you know.
Mm.
They always knew more about pop culture than I did. They always shared, like, you know, what they knew. My sister was real into fashion and the life of the, you know, the pop culture icon and that kind of thing. Whereas my brother was into tech, you know, and the new things that were coming out. So he was always bringing me the next, you know, he was always saying like, hey, you got to check out this Nintendo, man. And I'd be too busy with some trying to figure out watercolors or something, you know, and he'd be like, or trying to figure out like how wood works so I could like build a thing in my backyard, you know.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, yo, man, you're missing out. The new game Pong is working, and it's the hottest thing on the streets right now. And you got to get on this. Yeah. So he's opened my eyes to like the new shit, you know. Now he's a programmer, you know, right, coder guy now, you know, sought after for his coding ability, making apps and shit. But but at that time, you know, he was like hipping me to that stuff going on, and he was also an artist, so I always had my ear open to him, what he had to say, because he saw my struggle with drawing and painting, you know. Yeah. So and my sister's just she's hilarious, man. You gotta interview her sometime. She's the best. And so I really, you know, I there was, you know, we had a lot of good times just like messing with each other and being and our interaction, our dynamic between each other was something when I moved away to college, I missed that a lot.
What is your cultural makeup? That's not only to say what's your ethnicity, but also what is the culture of where you grew up? You kind of already talked about it, but what's the culture of where you grew up and the uniqueness of where you're from?
I mean, yeah, okay. Well, my grandmother's from the South, you know. She was one of those people who came over on that great walk west, you know, where your pre-war time, your Depression era president is saying, oh, there's no jobs down south. Okay, so go over here, y'all. Yeah, because I got something for you. There's a naval shipyard outside of Los Angeles. There's one in Long Beach, one in San Diego. We need you Negroes to come down here, and we also need you essays over here too. Can y'all get down here as fast as possible? And you'll fill these jobs, and then that'll shift the economy, especially on the West Coast. That'll change everything. And I mean, it did. It was a very successful. That New Deal is one of those most successful kind of like political moves in history for an American president. And my grandmother's part of that. Her husband also, the man she met over here and married, was also part of that. You know, they just left Georgia after being at Spelman for 4 years, getting a degree. You know, I think my grandfather went to a lesser known school, but it was also founded by Black Southern college. And oh God, it'll come back to me at the end of this conversation, I'm sure. But,
what state it's in? Do you know?
Oh, he was in South Carolina. She was in Georgia, and they never knew each other down south. When they moved to the West Coast, they met and were like, oh yeah, I know your cousin, I know your granduncle, they had all these people in common, of course. And some of them were here. A lot of her brothers and sisters also moved out to LA. So that kind of Southern like family was part of what my mom grew up with, and as a Los Angeles kid, and she kind of brought that to me. We had a lot of that, you know. But what you'll find, obviously, in South Central Los Angeles, I mean, you'll find like the further east you go, basically the farther south, the farther east you go, the more kind of you feel like you're in Little Louisiana. As far as
that LA to LA trek.
You can hear it, man. You can hear it, and just go to the mall and listen. You know, close your eyes, and you're like, "Wow!" I hear South Carolina. I hear parts of Texas that have a real strong twang to them. You know, but like large populations of those people are there. So I feel like all of us in South Central were like some part of the South in some way, like our culture. You know, because we were following a lot of the same like whatever preconceived ideas that like our grandparents had. You know. And their way, like how you sit at the table and you know, how you treat your elders, how you treat the younger people than you, you know, each one teach one, the whole, you know, a lot of the little philosophies that kind of helped me out when I was first starting out as a grown up, as a like I'm in the
Yeah.
world by myself, you know. Those were the things that were kind of like they were putting on us. I didn't even know at the time.
Yeah.
I'm working on a cartoon about it, but it's been very intermittent work, but making some progress on that.
Is that your like autobiographical thing,
It
or?
ended up being kind of an autobiographical thing. It started out to be about people in my life as a kid growing up, you know.
Yeah.
But it ended up being it's pretty much being about this me, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
the lead characters are like my sister and brother
Mm-hmm.
and I. So you know, I can kind of, you know, it's kind of it's a great way to like keep in touch with them when they're like they all
Yeah.
got busy lives and shit, you know. It's like we got this
Yeah.
thing we're working on. I got questions to ask you. We're gonna talk for at least an hour this weekend.
Man, I just went back home to Michigan this past weekend, and my cousin, who we're both like the artists of the family. Like, there's multiple artists in my family, but like we're
Okay.
the ones that draw. And he's like, I still want to do that, thing about grandma.
Yeah, I know. There's things. Yeah, there's biographical stuff that I've always kind of strayed away from. You're right. I mean, even when the idea came up when I was younger, I always kind of like pushed that back. Like, let me think about this thing with the knight and the dog instead of like my own, because that escapism thing is like, it's so easy to love it and it's so relatable. But people also really get into it when you are able to like put your crap out in a storyline. They resonate with that in a way that I'm always looking for that in writers now when I have to hire writers. You know, we're just working on something right now with a science fiction thing with Warner Brothers, and it's like a kind of a dream project because it comes out of something I did as a little an art book years and years ago that they sold at the con, and some of those people got it, you know, and it had a concept in it. And they were like, let's take this concept and turn it into. So I was like, you know, when the question comes up of like how to make characters like feel real and feel relatable and make them so that people remember them when they leave Netflix and they've just seen like a million images and been just awash in sensory overload, right? How do you take away from that and still remember the characters you created, you know, from your thing? And they were like, you know, putting that biographical element in it, especially painful stuff or stuff that was like cognitive dissonance where you just didn't get it at the time, but now you see it from a different view. And they were like, that's the gold that you got to put into this thing. You know, the writers that I've been meeting, you know, the good ones that I admire, they all say that's what they put into it, you know? And that's the cool thing about projects like this is even if they never get made, you end up meeting the most interesting people and learning from them, you know? Because a lot of in my business, there's a lot of, you know, half the projects that we embark on and that we put our hearts into just don't get made. You're probably hearing that a lot. You're interviewing these people, you know, but
I mean, I was on a project last year that I don't know if it's coming to Netflix. So
they just go by the wayside. And sometimes they're just a big question mark. You're not sure if they're dead or not. Right. Yeah. That's been, man, welcome to the, boy. Since Roger Rabbit, I've you know, it's been that like, what's happening now?
Yeah. It is kind of crazy that people can put so much money into it and be like, nope.
So much resources. To me, those resources are like, oh wait, that was a year of somebody's life, so they were probably raising a family during that year. Some of them moved out here to work on this thing. They made big shifts in their own deal, you know, their own journey to like be on this project. Like, and now it's like, who said it had to be off now? Oh, that person. Did they have anything to do with it? No.
Right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're just the boss of the subsidiary, the umbrella company of the. And it's like that kind of stuff has always been like a little bit of a like that always makes my heart a little more like you know. But the craft itself always keeps you coming back and pushes away all your cynicism. You know.
Yeah.
It's really easy to get cynical. So I'm always trying to tell my students to like just dive back into the craft to find the joy again, because there's so many disappointments that are going to hit you. And you know, all my theater friends from CalArts, they all have been going through that too. I can watch them in their careers as they go through and like it's only after 10 or 12 or 19 disappointments that they go, oh, I'm moving up now in my career and, you know, what I can do for myself, my, you know, reputation. All that. It's these weird, you know, sometimes they seem to be going backwards in their career before they hit forward again. And it's a parallel that like is teaching me to like be patient and see it realistically, you know, because what did we expect, you know? Everything we work on isn't going to get made.
Right. So kind of segues in, like, you got to meet Branford Marsalis in college and learn about, you know, his idea of music, and how did you apply that to your art, particularly, you know, the idea of practice and stuff like that?
Damn. Yeah, Branford, that was cool, man. That's one of those things where you can't believe you're in the same room with this person, and your ears and eyes are locked on to everything they're saying, everything they have to offer, because you feel how much of a student you are, you know, like, I got to be a sponge right now. Shut up. And just, unless you have a good question that can like bring out another thing, he was just dropping all these gems that I ended up incorporating into my own dialogue with people, because I felt like, oh, this is so wise, you know. But as a young person, you're also trying to pretend like you came up with it, you know. And you're like, I met the coolest person in the world. Let me try to pretend to be him now.
Right.
You know? But, the ladies love it, man. So I saw somebody who I had just been hearing this music. I thought, oh, that's genius. And then he comes off the stage and goes into the students for Q&A, and just presents humbleness, like humility, you know? And I kind of, it's like, oh yeah, like when I met Dot, when we were in school and we went to see the Dodgers as a school, you know, as a classroom, and to get to like talk to them or hear them about their careers or whatever. I remember we did that when we were like, I think I was in like junior high. And, you know, some of the most amazing athletes that you could ever see, you know, like you see what they could do on TV, and you think, how could this person be anything but like crazy confident, you know what I mean? Like, they must think they're gods, you know, to be able to do this. But then you see as a young person, you see, oh yeah, this person's got like the humility of like a, you know, he's more like a put upon dad, you know, who's got things to, it's like, I got more to worry about than I'm good at this, but man, life is bigger than that. And they're trying to tell you lessons about other things, you know, and you're like, yeah, but when you scored like 35, like, you know, you kind of think about them on that level, and you're like, oh yeah, no, people are like many facets. They're all these different parts to them. And
that's funny, because I just saw a post, the basketball player Jokic, like, he just like, in the off season, he's just like a regular person, and people were making
so regular,
about it.
Dude. That's kind of what I like.
Like, he's not thinking about basketball at all.
Yeah, now that I follow a lot of people who I admire, I kind of realize like, oh yeah, that was a real like that's something that now we got the privilege of being able to see, because you live with your celebrities now. You know, you experience them like day to day. And back then they were just so remote. I was like, these people must be real different, because they're physically, obviously, they're better than everybody else. How did they get on this team? So they must be mentally better in some way. And they're like, no, I'm dealing with the same human sort of needs and stuff. So whatever successes I have, it's like, yeah, I had the same shit to hurdle over that you do, you know. So don't make no excuses for yourself, that kind of thing. And I heard a lot of that stuff from Branford, you know, as he was getting into it. And also the time he was. So I expect people like that to always be like, you know, like, I got to get out of here. I can't talk to you, know. But the time they would be willing to give you, the generosity of that, that taught me a lot. He talked specifics about certain like that I wish I had written down at the time, but it was he would talk about you know, playing in a group, like setting, and what you know in yourself as a musician. Who plays solo, right? With a certain spirit, but it's a different spirit when they're playing as an ensemble, you know. Right. The ensemble, like energy and intelligence and communication. That blend, yeah, it takes different things. You have to be open to all those things. And then when you're soloing, there's other things that you have to sort of tune out certain of those things and find other stuff that's important you know, it's the audience is the main, like your main like place for where your ultimate, where your message is going, you know. So it's like just those cool things like that I was like, this is over my head. I'm only 19, like, but it's real resonant. Yeah, and I would sit down in the dorms with other like the student jazz artists, you know, and let them hear them like pontificating about it, you know. Just the few brothers that were around CalArts, it was such a white community in a lot of ways, but the few people of color that had that were also at that age were real opinionated, like it was a good that was a good collection of people, because to hear conversation around you is what you need to like form your own, you know, your own basis. And to hear them breaking it down, you know, and it was like, oh yeah, that was even more profound than I thought it was. And so yeah, but
that's what I think about. Like there's a Sojourner Truth quote, something about a shadow. I remember the first time I saw the quote, I'm like, that is deep. I do not know what it means, but I know it's that deep.
Yeah. And
then like Jordan Peele movies, like some Jordan Peele movies, I don't realize how deep they are until the conversation starts.
All of them.
And I'm like, oh, I missed all of that.
I think all of them, you know, like as closely as I was watching, excuse me, you know, as I was watching the Alien movie, and seeing like trying to see the things, trying to see the subtext, you know, trying to take it all in also, because I just watched it twice in back to back, so because I knew this is Jordan Peele, I'm gonna have to watch it twice, you know, just like with Us. It ended up being like 4 times with Us to pick up all the things that, you know, like, oh, okay, now I'm with you now, bro, you know, but that's okay. I think it's meant to be that. I think they're designed for that, you know, like rewatching is kind of fun when you can rediscover shit or, you know, find new things. So yeah, no, I love being able to just talk to artists about what they love about the art they love. The other thing was Branford was talking about, he was interested in what we do, you know. He was like, I was sitting talking with him with another animator, and he was interested in how that relates to music, you know. And so he started asking questions about that, which kind of shows where their head is at, you know, in a lot of ways. Just to see they're still exploring like what it is they do as music makers, you know. You know, and so you know, because I came into school with this idea that when you graduate, you kind of know it all, like you're done, you know. Like I don't know why I thought that, but it's like, no, it's this lifelong, ongoing thing. It's the learning never stops. It's just degrees of knowledge, you know. So, you know, I you know, once I started teaching a few years ago, I realized, that's kind of how you present yourself. You're like, yeah, we're not done as your elders. We're like, you know, we're still on that journey, but we can see the goal. We see the goals better than you do, you know. And like you kind of haven't formed your taste yet, so we're here to kind of help you figure out how to curate, you know, what you like and love, and you know. But he, you know, that was a really cool visit. And there were other people, Vince, Dejonet, and you know, the people, the Gamelons, the Thai orchestra, you know, that came out and somebody dragged us to it. I don't want to see that. But then they would talk about music as spirit, you know, and all these things that I had never heard before, and sound resonances, and how audio affects our senses and our state of mind, and all like esoteric stuff that ended up being science, you know, later. And you know, they would, you know, I mean, Branford had things that were like meditative, and he would say that those compositions were meant to kind of bring you. They were that he knew doing them, that was kind of that was the place they put him in, and that would put you in this meditative place or a contemplative place. And then meanwhile, there'd be something that would like sparkle your idea making, or your intellectual, you know, putting together of known knowledge and forming new things, you know, like every brain is capable of doing that, you know, but we're not always in that headspace, you know. So that music could do that. Like, oh man, I was like, so my brain was expanding so fast at CalArts, it's insane. You know.
So this is the part of the interview where I list out not all of your projects, but some of your projects, so that people out there could know that, you know, the people who look like us that worked on some of our favorite things. You already talked about a couple of them, but I'll just go through the list. And correct me because sometimes IMDb is wrong, so I'll just kind of fly through the list. Again, it's not everything, but some highlights. The Black Cauldron, The Great Mouse Detective.
Nope, wrong.
Oh,
Sorry, they already they already fell off. I mean, IMDb. Yeah.
Oliver and Company.
Saxon keeps reminding me to go back in there and edit, and I just don't have the admin ability to keep doing it. No,
What about Oliver and Company?
No, I was at college. But
The Little Mermaid.
But actually, yeah, my one of my upperclassmen was working on Oliver while he was at CalArts. That's crazy. Yeah.
What about Tiny Toons Adventures?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. Rescuers Down Under?
Nope.
Dang it. Jetsons the movie?
Jetsons the movie. Oh, potentially. What year was that?
1990.
No. Yeah, I was jumping around a lot. But yeah, I can see how there's another Bell apparently in the business that I've never met.
Tony Bell?
No, I know Tony really well, but I mean, we just worked on something last year. But there's someone else who seems to be getting whose stuff gets conflated with mine on IMDb a lot. I went in there and took a bunch of stuff off a couple of years ago, but I haven't been back since. It's like,
well, I know you worked on Liquid Television.
Oh yeah.
And Baby's Kids.
Yes. Yeah, after Roger, it was really on to like Warner Brothers and Brad Bird. And so he was doing Family Dog, and so I was working on that first Family Dog thing before it became a series, those shorts with Brad.
Did you actually work on Happily Ever After?
Yeah.
Fairy Tales for Every Child? Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So in the story of, I moved to San Francisco after the riot, and then Bruce knew that I had moved up here, and we had just done Bebe's Kids a couple of years before that. He was doing Happily Ever After, but he wanted to move on to start his jambalaya, and that stuff was just taking off. I think he was a little tired of HBO too, because they were kind of like challenging to work with, So they were the producers of the show, and so they just invited me like very kindly. They told me realistically what it was like to work on it. Like, here's what you can expect, but could you come and like take over for the season, and like direct those episodes? And I was like, yeah, I'm all in. I mean, I don't even, just I'll learn as I go. I don't, not that I'd ever directed a TV show before, but they were telling me what things I knew how to do that would be good for a director, basically. Like, these are your qualities that we think would work on this show. So they convinced me I could do it. And so I jumped on there and brought some of my team with me, some of my people I had artists I'd met along the way. And that was a big part of my life. I got to hire a lot of people of color on that job, hundreds. And
nice.
It was a very empowering and very like satisfying experience from that perspective. Met a lot of like crazy Hollywood legends too, because elders get left behind, people who were like storyboard artists for Hitchcock were like hunting around for work and putting their portfolios in for our dumb show, like people who had been like people like doing like lighting concepts for like Myrna Loy, like Hollywood legends, and had been like on studio contracts for years and stuff. But they get older, and then the younger generation comes and takes over all those departments, and they find themselves kind of more on the outside. So they had these amazing stories, man. Some of these storyboard people would just be telling you about like having dates with like Rita Hayworth or meeting Marilyn Monroe at a party and going home to read books with them or something, just like crazy stuff. And then, and I was getting to getting to meet people all over LA and find out who was because when you have a show, all the portfolios come in and the interviews start, and then you start going, oh, look at all the man, what? Oh, there's El Salvador people over here. It's all these all these Filipino artists are like really great draftsmen, every single one of them. So that's like it ends up going on your list of like, here's how I see like what's out there and who I can pull in for like a project, and just like your database goes up so much higher. So it's a good experience to do things like that, even if you don't like to direct,
right?
Because on episodic TV is a grind. It's really hard. Yeah, it's hard.
Did you actually work on Soul and When the Wild?
Yeah, I did design stuff on Soul, and I worked on Joe, the lead character, and the New York, New York City was a character kind of in that movie. Yeah. So the people of New York, that was what the art director put me on. So yeah, I worked on those for a few months, and really fun, really good jobs.
And I definitely know you worked on the history of white people in America.
Yep. That's a partnership show with Drew Takahashi, who was the owner of Colossal Pictures back in the day, and with John Halpern. They both have a thing on Netflix that you probably would love. It's full of animation. It's called A Trip to Infinity.
Okay.
And it's probably under the science documentary category on Netflix. Just came out in April. What was I going to say about that show? Oh, anyway, we're working on, we're all currently doing the second episode right now.
Nice.
Fong Moy, about the first Chinese woman in America. Yeah.
I saw that. I saw you posting about that.
The market model was sell these toys. Like, let's move these toys. Toys R Us is a big sponsor. We have kind of a mandate from our networks. There was only 3 places where animation was being could be streamed through or seen through, which was 3 networks: ABC, NBC, and CBS. So it was all kind of like everything you could see was funneled through those 3. And at that time, they just, animation was considered a certain thing at that time. It wasn't for adults. It wasn't for thinking people. It wasn't for teenagers or tweens. It was really for kids. Now we have an explosion where everything is much more. It's defined in a real different way now. It's like, is it good? So I came up. I got trained sort of in that LA studio tradition of production, of learning like the workflow from the ground up. And and I kind of found my place in that for a few years. I worked on the New Adventures of Mighty Mouse for CBS, and that got me in the room with somebody I had long admired as a kid growing up, or I thought of as a character who was definitely someone to meet, even if I didn't admire him. The Ralph Bakshi, who, when I think of him, he's a character even in my mind, because he was so outsized. He wasn't like a real person in a lot of ways. He was a big, bombastic, yelling, screaming, red-faced, real politically incorrect, loud and proud, to the point where, to where everyone on the crew called him crazy. It wasn't just me noticing that this guy was to the left, out of left field somewhere. But he came with this reputation, right? This is the guy from Fritz the Cat and the Lord of the Rings animated cartoon, the movies. And he had done probably 7 films during the time I was growing up that made me think, wow, where is this coming from? These are real different. These science fiction and like the Wizards, and he was connected to a lot of New York street culture with his film inspirations. So I had one eye open for what he was doing as well. And so when I got in there, I found out they were doing the Mighty Mouse show, and they were establishing themselves doing television. And so we did a couple of seasons of that show. It was me and maybe 6 people from my class who were all they were all just starting out, just kind of figuring out what we were doing, but all really interested in working for Ralph Bakshi and seeing what that was like.
Yeah.
So on the writers crew, there was my roommate Andrew Stanton. All right, Andrew runs Pixar now on as a director producer kind of person, but he came up with Finding Nemo and Finding Dory, and this is the creator of those films and director writer kind of person of those things. And my other my layout supervisor was Rich Moore, who ended up making a bunch of stuff. Well, he's responsible for 7 or 8 Emmy Awards from The Simpsons, which came just like 5-10 years later. He was on The Simpsons and, starting to build out that. And then he created a couple of his own shows like The Critic and several other things.
Nice.
And then in my layout crew was Jeff Pigeon, who's been, lead character designer Pixar for 20 years now. And there was a lot of people on that first Mighty Mouse show that kind of made me think, how do we all come from that one little crew? Because it was a small low rent building in Van Nuys, California. You know where Van Nuys is, right?
I live in Van Nuys, Sherman Oaks.
Yeah. In the 80s, it was like economic downturn. It was a recession time. So you should imagine Van Nuys in a recession in the middle of the summer.
Yeah.
It's like hot, it was like an armpit, it was like it was rough. There wasn't much there. None of the restaurants that are there now. So it was almost like we were in a ghost town.
Yeah.
And at least the block we were on. And we were all kind of driving in from Valencia, sort of living on campus, coming down and working because we had to work part of the time in the summer. But learning about that whole area, there was a lot of stuff going on in Van Nuys, some of the first early versions of like other studios that ended up being in North Hollywood, basically, I would say. It's a kind of Burbank, North Hollywood area. They kind of moved there, but they had originally been in sort of, they paid slightly lower rent in that Van Nuys area. So while I was there, I saw, people from Ruby Spears and people from the Klasky Chupo and these other places that were going to become like real staples in like TV animation. And one of my bosses was John Cristofalucci, who is on the Mighty Mouse show. So I was working under John Cristofalucci and Bruce Timm on that show, and they both went off and kind of from that show they kind of started working on stuff that was closer to them and their own projects. And I went to work with John, and his studio was called Spumco. And they were doing a show called the Ren and Stimpy Show. So when I got over there, and John had been kind of training us in the in the workflow and stuff like that, and also just in those of us who were trying to become 2D animators, we all needed more drawing training. Like you can feel it when you get out of school that you need a certain amount of like more training and push in terms of like your art, your draftsmanship. So you magnetize towards jobs where there are people there who are going to push you on that level and kind of supervise your progress, So I got lucky with John because he was very because he doesn't say yes to anything, he accepts nothing but perfection and the very best of what everyone could bring. So we were kind of lucky to be in there for at least. I'd say I was there for about 6 months doing the second season of Ren and Stimpy, and so I got to experience something a lot of animators don't get to experience, which is the show itself and the creation of that show. But also after season 2, Nickelodeon came in and fired everybody, essentially. I'm trying to make a long story short. A lot of us workers found out that for months before that, they had been fighting with John himself.
Mm-hmm.
He had kind of a back and forth that was real vitriolic, like real rough, and he was showing himself to be like pretty concrete in his ways, and not like they felt like they couldn't reason with their director after a while. And so they started looking for other people to kind of take over the show, because the show was at the top of the ratings.
Yeah.
So even though it was a hit, it was costing them, in their projections, it was costing them so much more than it should to make, and more than all their other shows were to make. So that was unacceptable. And we the workers, like I was a layout artist, and I was helping with like timing the sheets. So we would create all the, after storyboard was done, to tell you like what the story was, where the gags were, like whose expression turned sour or happy or whatever at what point. Then we would go on and work on the timeline, model sheets, and we would sort of figure out what the timing of what all those things should be, and then send that stuff to the overseas studio.
Right.
In our case, overseas was in Vancouver, so it was just up the way. You know, it's just it wasn't overseas. It was we had a Canadian company that of people that had gone to school with John Cristofalucci, very good animators. They gave him a really good deal, so we communicated with them back and forth. My job was to do all the layouts that was the halfway point between the storyboard and the final animation.
Okay.
Right? All right. So I got into layout at originally at Bakshi's, and then I continued there on Ren and Stimpy until after about 6 months.
Yeah.
I got the big surprise of hearing rumors. I didn't believe the rumors that they were gonna come and shut it down, but we found out one day when the Nickelodeon people came down and like apologized to us and said, "Look, this is not your fault. This is what you're doing." But John over here, he's been misbehaving, and
they threw him under the bus so quick.
I mean, it would be after 4 months of like holding their tongues and pulling back and saying, no, be nice. Try not to upset the cart, because he runs the company. You know, it's a very small crew. It's only about 14 of us, maybe 16 to 20 of us if you include the editors. And a small company, and they didn't want to shut down a small company, but his attitude was fuck you from almost the very beginning. To CBS, right? To one of the big three. And when there are only 3 networks, when there's no other outlets, that increases the amount of power and influence that they have. So they couldn't believe this guy, that he was so disrespectful to their policies and the way they wanted to do things. And they also found out there was some certain safety things around the studio that he wasn't paying attention to or taking care of. You know, it wasn't the most professionally run. You know, these little companies, they didn't have human resources, or tech support, or any of the things of support that I had at bigger companies. You know, so I went on to, speaking of bigger companies, I went on to that following summer to work on the feature Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And,
oh, nice. So what would you say you love about animation?
Well, I think I love I used to think it was a small group of us, a little, the fan community, you know what I mean? But look, now it's everybody, we all get a chance to see what we love about it. And I guess I've always seen animation as a reliable way to make hard feelings and emotions or difficult ideas relatable to me and understandable, and making to the point where I can start to see, I could see beyond myself, I could see bigger, higher. So I think animation, I like what it does to consciousness. It lets us see there's other realities out there, even if it's just ones that we've made, and that keeps a sense of magic in the world, So even after you're done believing in Santa Claus, sorry kids, And even when you get over that emotional hump, you know, and you're like, oh, there's no Easter bunny, like there's no real bunny, like, oh shit, right? Where the magic starts to dissipate from the world, right? And you start to feel foolish for even having believed in it to begin with. That's that weird point that everybody goes to where they're like, why did I ever believe in it? God damn, they got me on that one. Where it's like, no, you don't get it. You got it. You have to have the human spirit needs to have a point of purchase for belief itself. We need to know that belief is possible for us to even get up and go do things, to achieve things, you know, and to like get out of tough situations. You know what I mean? Like, there's some people, you know, I mean, we need to be able to imagine ourselves not with somebody who's not good for us. You know, in order to get out of that situation, we need to be able to see the community around us in a better state than it is, in order for us to be good members of a community. We're not doing any good for the world unless we can actually imagine things being better, right? So I love that it's an invitation for you to keep being imaginative, and it's always offering you some new thing, like the pursuit of novelty, which I'm obsessed with novelty and new ideas and new things. So I think, you know, so maybe that's more of a personal one, but, you know, than universal. But it's like the knowing that I love that with animation. I know I haven't seen the biggest, worst, craziest, best thing yet, because there's always some new thing coming, you know. It's kind of the same reason I love music. You know, because it's never gonna get old in terms of like what it offers me. I don't always answer the question. I have severe ADD, but you know, it's worked for me in the past. So I'm just relaxed. I just use it as a superpower now.
Yeah, you got to. I would love to say that I love seeing your drawings. I love your art style.
Oh, thank you. I've been working hard on that.
Yes, it's so dynamic. Because it's just like, first of all, it's lovely to see, you know, Black characters, but also just to see the exaggeration and just a dynamic art style and what you do with it and stuff like that. Particularly like looking at your YouTube channel of the different animations you've done over the years. It's just like so cool.
Cool, man. I appreciate you. I appreciate that. That's just, you know, I think it reflects all like a big wide view of like what I like, and the fact that I can't, you know, settle in on anything particularly. But you know, over the past few years, I've been trying to formulate something that I can offer the documentary community that is a producible way of making stuff that looks the way I want it to look, you know, because there's always that thing of like, what are the budgets going to be on something? You have to be realistic about what a documentary can give you. But, you know, for your budget, they never have the same, they never know really what animation costs. So you always have to figure out something that can.
They always think it costs less. That's a consistency.
Even if it's HBO, and they've been doing it forever, you know, the original documentary people, they still come to you and go, really? Is that much? You know, so, you know, but nature of the business in a way, but I'm trying to, you know, do something that can kind of be repeatable again and again, you know, and easy to create. I'm still having fun doing it. But at the same time, trying to stay open to some friends want to try and do graphic novels, and, you know, I'm waiting on them to finish the latest chapter of the script. I mean, it's up to you guys. Come on, let's go. Like I'm ready to draw. Can you write now? And others that are, you know, like I'm working on trying to, Taylor Hackford, we're trying to collaborate on a documentary for a man who's in his mid 80s now. And, you know, he's just written his memoirs, was the creator of Island Records, Chris Blackwell. And a guy who put Bob Marley on the map. And we were working on that life story documentary. And Taylor's been interviewing him over the years. They become good friends. And but he has to go to Jamaica because the guy won't travel anymore. He's got, you know, he's kind of above the age of like comfortably being able to fly places, you know. So he hasn't traveled for a while. and we're trying to get that thing done. And it's another one of those things of like, because it kind of relies on the interviews and also relies on Taylor being able to meet up with me, and we have to be able to cross past it. Like, it's probably going to take a year or two longer than it should to get it done. It's just not, there's no way to like make it all logistically happen. And that's more and more of my projects are doing that thing where they go away for a while, they come back, and then I have to like shift gears and figure out where I can fit that into my schedule. And it's animation clients come and go. And so it's required me to be a little bit more like flexible and to go, okay, I normally do projects this way. Like my favorite thing to do is to do just 2D animation that brings a character, object, or whatever to life, where it feels like it has weight, feels like it has some, there's some thought condition to it. It's a type of person. It has a view of the world, that kind of thing is very expensive to do. Yeah. Right. So as an independent animator, I have had to find things that I can do that work. If I'm going to do any animation at all, it's going to be on a smaller budget. And then I can support that by freelancing as in terms of design, which means I have to kind of jump around from Henson to Warner Brothers to ILM to Disney on little things. Because design is only a few months at a time, It don't, sometimes you'll circle back to it a year later and you do some more, but even for a game, you don't spend a lot of time in that design chair. So that kind of stuff ends up, but it pays a lot. It pays a lot more than animation for a documentary would, right. More than Netflix or HBO is willing to pay. So for short segments, so I've had to figure out a business model that kind of allows all of that, right. And I'm glad I did all those different things at Colossal and Wild Brain that they hit me with just different styles and, like, can you do cutout stuff? I'm like, okay, we'll figure that out. Because it made me go, got me the attention of someone like Henry Selick, who just said, oh, I see your sensibility there. And I used to work at Colossal too, while you were doing those commercials, while we were over in the lab on the stage working on Pillsbury Doughboy commercials. Right? We did 100 of those things. And meanwhile, we're like, we're figuring out techniques for 2D that we can do that maybe save a little bit of money, where maybe it's not drawing every other drawing, maybe doing every fourth or sixth drawing, but in this kind of color technique or whatever, and trying to keep up with software to see how things can become easier to do, effects to achieve and stuff like that. Have
you tapped into the Blender, like grease pencil stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, right now that's top of my mind when I think about that, because you have to train in it, and so I have to do a little bit every day. And at my age, I have to kind of like keep it up in order to like move forward with the software. But grease pencil, I took the grease pencil so fast. It was like it's like a dream program, man. Like it makes my head explode to think that that people who work in animation came up with this thing. I've met these guys online. They're such good coders, but they're also so creative, in how they think of how we can interface with the machine and get our thoughts across. And it's complicated, it's not but no software, none of these UIs have been like really, really like the same kind of user interface that, ultimately an animator would want. For me to really express myself, it would have to be a keyboard, it would have to be a small number of algorithms that I can use of movements of my hands that I can use to say something very directly to the audience. We're never going to get that. So ultimately you have to kind of be able to work around with all these tools and be kind of like a Stevie Wonder, to be able to say anything, we want the happy of things to sing, to be like, to come at you like music, the way that Questlove describes music and sound to you, his faith that like it shifts the consciousness of societies, right? On some other level, even if they don't know it's happening, that he has that capability, and so we want sort of to have our pacing and our all our decisions that we make on our to try to get that effect in people, because we're experimenting with it. We're seeing, well, what do we do? How do we get there? Not every animator has that. It's a luxury is what I'm saying. It pay a lot, but it's kind of a luxury creatively to get to do this and experiment in this way and try to find some communication method that's useful in the world, that's nutritious. You know,
so for you as a lifelong learner, how does that translate into how you teach?
Another big question. But I don't seem to have a big problem translating everything anything I can sum up from our experience, you know, because when you're going through stuff, you're absorbing it, your brain is still processing. It doesn't come as naturally. But when I started teaching, I was in my late 40s, and I had a chance at that point to like get some 20/20 on some of my learning, you know, things I got trained in. And I had my own opinion now about stuff I had learned from Glenn Keane when I was 18. You know what I mean? Because he was doing night classes at CalArts. Or Mike Giamo, one of the great art directors around, art director for Pocahontas, who was our teacher, our design teacher at school. You know, one of those people we had all the memories of, those quirky teachers. And all the things he would say that would become part of our like vernacular later on, you know, like I would catch me and my other fellow students working on a project years later and talking about the art direction and sounding like him, you know what I mean? Not even realizing we were doing it, you know? And so I've had to accept that when I'm doing my best teaching, I'm channeling all the people who, you know, I mean, Bruce Smith, speaking of someone who you never leave a conversation with without feeling smarter about this business or the art. I mean, I don't know what to say. He's a genius, you know. That guy again. So it's hard if you have the privilege of encountering these people, whether you become lifelong friends or not, it doesn't really matter. But you do take something with you from that, and when you get a chance to teach, that's when it comes out. You know, when teaching, when a classroom is put in front of you, and you're like, anxiety, what do I do? You know, and all of us, I started checking out, emailing my friends who teach and being like, what is this like for you? And they're like, oh man, it's like stage fright city, baby. So I know that, you know, I had to come up with something that's going to not make them like feel my fear, but like make them feel excited about what I do. So I just tap into like what got me psyched about, you know, things I was learning as I was going along, you know, and you can pretty easily turn that into a syllabus, you know, and you can make that into it's not hard to like, oh, we should do this for our class. No, these students should do this in order to pick up these ideas. And then, you know, and then I'll go visit this other classroom with the other teacher and see how they're explaining these things. And then I'll come back and bring that into the classroom too, you know, and and going back to my notes, I went back and I found I had like some old portfolios that had a bunch of Glenn's notes in them, a bunch of Bruce's notes, Chris Felucci, Bruce Timm, you know, things, opinions at the time maybe, but also really smart things to say about how things should be done, you know?
Yeah.
And that was a treasure trove, man. I was like, this is cheating. This is great because I put those things away and forgot about them for so long, you know?
Yeah.
And then I realized like, oh yeah, this is a smart thing to do. Being a nerd is sometimes good because you can go back and pull that shit out again and be like, because when you got like a Xerox copy before there was like printers or, you know, easily, you know, gotten to printers, it just costs a lot on campus. So you would just go find a copier and like grab somebody, can I borrow this real quick in your sketchbook? Just copy that, you know, and then take it away, you know, or take a picture of it or whatever. And just trying to, because you knew that you were like, I'm going to probably go back to this again and learn from it. And there's so many little gems like that, man, that I could just and bring to the classroom and feel like, even if the students don't feel like they're getting anything out of me, I know for a fact that they are. They don't have to believe it. At the end of the day, they can rate it a 3 or a 2 or a 1 or whatever. But at the end of the day, they're probably going to get a gig based on something that I taught them.
Yeah, I'm teaching 2 classes right now that I got them 3 weeks before I had to teach them. So Sunday is when I do curriculum for the next week. But when I taught at I taught in 2017. I taught at Loyola University, New Orleans,
Oh,
and
nice.
that's where I realized, like, because sometimes because I the two classes I'm teaching now is, you know, Blender 3D modeling and Blender animation, but at Loyola it was Cinema 4D, and so I'm a 3D modeler professionally. So to try to get people from, okay, all these things are made up of shapes, and then
Yeah.
get them to like real, because then I have to do exercise where it's like, all right, cylinders and spheres and cubes, but then to get them to do actual 3D modeling, I'm like, oh, I need to build this bridge.
Yes,
Because
yes,
like
yes.
one of my students created like a pig of all these shapes, but I'm like, all right, but now you got to start like actually 3D model, like pushing and pulling vertices and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
I
right.
went back and was like, all right, let's create an apple so you can, you know, push and pull the points and stuff like that. And it's
Yeah.
like realizing, oh yeah, I need to build a bridge to this next thing that I need you to do.
Well, that's kind of why I like to get on the YouTube and see how different teachers are offering you things about, like, the Blender cats themselves have a great way of like teaching it and explaining how to do things and why I'm doing things. So even if I had never had any Maya experience at all, I think I could pick up a lot of like, oh, so sculpting is basically this, you know, and this set of tools when I'm in object mode offer me, you know, I can either do it this way or I can go over to sculpt mode and I can do it this way. And, you know, at the same time, if they could spend a little time at home with a ball of clay, right, and they could start to push and cut things out of it, then I think they get in that space, probably feel more comfortable with like just managing those tools, you know.
That's why I want to get into sculpting, because I got some clay right over there. Like, somebody's gonna be teaching me sculpting, because I've been struggling with ZBrush, but
it's good for you, man. It's really good for your brain. Yeah.
But I was a big Play-Doh kid, so I sculpted with my Play-Doh.
Right. Those connections are there, man. But you'll be making them for your students now. Like, they'll be able to connect that up and go, oh yeah, this is something. Because in digital world, I kind of need to like have some kind of kinetic analog, something that I can touch and feel that is an analog. You know.
But additionally,
Blender's amazing.
Yeah,
I'm glad to hear that you are so into it, because I'm going to have questions for you.
Fine, reach out to me. I mean, because if you have a California address, you could actually take my class for free. But
right on.
Yeah, but also, like, because I use some YouTube videos in teaching, I'm like, all right, I'm not giving you this dude, because, you know, a lot of people who do Blender are self-learners, and I'm like, this is not how you do it for a production environment.
Like, there's a kind of a more tried and true method on this.
Yeah.
You learn, like, this guy's kind of made it up as they go, and good on them, right?
Yeah.
But
if you're doing personal projects or freelance, it doesn't matter. But if you want to be in a production environment, don't do it like this. Yeah,
or work with a team. Well, you know, just communicate between 3 people even, you know. It's like, to have any kind of workflow, you really need to learn, like, with the production, because that's kind of how it trickles down in that way. The best methods kind of come down to like, what can we do over and over again reliably that's always going to get everybody there?
Yeah. A big thing I teach is like leaving your file so that another person can pick it up. Like, if you don't name anything in your file, or even like when they're turning stuff into me, put your name on it.
If you don't name, really, like just managing the same kind of stuff where you'd have to manage your assets in Photoshop or any art program.
Yeah.
Where if you can start to do it there, then you can carry it over to like Maya. But my students get so like freaked out by the space they're in, you know, by just the environment of that UI, that they forget really basic things. Like, is your name anywhere around? Anywhere? Like, no. And you saved out an MOV without your name on it too, and right.
But even if you're not passing the file over to somebody else, like, if you name the stuff, if you come back to it 6 months or a year later, you can easily be like, oh, here is the circle.
Yes, exactly.
Like, if you just have everything being like layer 1 through 52, like,
I was starting out, like I said, self-taught. So I started out with like the Blender, their website, and the tutorials on there. And then I went to LinkedIn and I was like, all right, what does LinkedIn have to say? Who's getting high ratings on there, and some of them were teaching specifically storyboarding, which I need to pick up on. So, so the board program and using that that add-on. That the best guys are going to be these people over here. And then for like sculpting, modeling, there was, and like it's, like who do you like on there as far as like
Jan Sculpts.
Yeah. See, that one's pretty damn, that person's pretty damn like complete. And also as they go through it, you feel like like you've done this before. They got this, like there's an order to all the videos. It's like, I love this. This is really easy to follow, Although, I mean, it's still, I have a lot of fun actually, even with people who are just talking about what they do, but they're not really teaching me anything about it.
There's a time lapse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, it's kind of cool, but I need to know like what to put my hand on, where to move it, and get it muscle memory.
I'll tell you, like, I'll send you somebody because I'm not totally creative. Like, I was going to become an electrical engineer before I found animation. So I have this analytical part of my brain. There is a guy like Zach, some Russian name, can't say it. But I got a couple of his courses, and he takes you step by step, and it's like, this is what I need. Like, I can't, the free flowing.
Because especially with grease pencil, it's like if you start out with that, you're kind of interfacing with grease pencil, but you're learning at the same time, like, oh, this is dimensional, so there's always a camera here. I can be aware of like I'm drawing this, but if I want to go and maybe design it and make it more of a here's a design thing to do with it, or like someone was recently explaining how to turn my drawings into just a sculpt, very in the most economical way, because there's obviously with Blender, there's probably a ton of ways to do it, but here's kind of, here's like the most intuitive thing you need to do, and here are the tools you want, here's what to look out for. And it was like, oh yeah. And I don't think I would have even considered it if if they hadn't brought it up. So to take, not to just sculpt something outright, just to go into the sculpting program, but like to use the drawing as my base, I can do that.
Because that's essentially when using like a Maya, particularly if you have the character model sheet with the front and the side, that's essentially what we're doing. We're just kind of tracing from the front and the side. The character, or even like I have a Batmobile that I always keep in my, like if I have like a Zoom meeting, I'll have my Batmobile that I created, the 1989 Michael Keaton one. I use the blueprints, the top, the side and the front, and you just kind of trace.
I think I've seen
multiple angles. So
I think you have it online.
I mean, it is a skill, but it's tracing also.
Right. But then you can sort of freeform if you're looking at it from different angles, and you
and then go into perspective and like, all right, let me move.
And make tweaks along the way and stuff. I mean, I'm not always 100% sure of a design when the drawing's done. Sometimes
because sometimes 2D people, it's like you can't do, like, this is not three-dimensional thought.
There's no sculptural idea in here. It's just a stick figure, and
the principle of animation, solid drawing. This is not solid drawing.
Good one. See, we'll see. Like, even you say you're an engineer, but you know a lot from the perspective of like what the 2D person has to remember, or else stuff just falls apart. And as the software and the capabilities of like the digital get stronger, I got to keep dissuading my students from like just relying on any automation to make their animation, like just don't use a filter, make it yourself.
You also worked at Korea. That's where I got my first job in the industry, working on Family Guy. So from like getting those 2D drawings and having to create them in 3D, because the 3D print department was very small. I worked for Digital Fiction in Seoul, but like having to create those in 3D was how I knew that it was not the 2D was what.
How many people were on the crew? How many people were on your floor or in your?
So anywhere particularly in the 3D department, it was anywhere for like, because I only worked there a year, but anywhere from 7 to 11 people, because there was a lot of turnover.
A year is a long time. I mean, I know Family Guys seems to be going on forever, but there's always this.
It was only a year because I got tired of being stared at and I left. So
when you're in
2 years, but
it has a different. it's like after a while you get sick of it. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
I felt the first time I was in a foreign country where they were all like, "Damn, he's dark, huh?" Like it felt kind of fun for a minute. You know what I
Right.
mean? And then, especially when I was younger, like my not arrogance, but like my like like white people are beautiful. Like that.
Yeah.
Like my pride or whatever would be like, cool, I'm here, stay. Do what you need to do. And like
Yeah.
in South Korea, that actually they took that as like I was trying to be that the ladies thought I was like hitting on them or something, and they were very receptive to that. But that's not what I was trying. I was just trying to be like, I'm a shy person. Let me at least exude the most confidence I can muster,
Right.
and try to make them feel good at the same time, because I don't want these people afraid of me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like they're all shorter. I'm big and dark, and dreads. I just wanted to try to be. So yeah, I know what you mean. Totally.
Yeah. But
It's
like
like,
as an introvert, it's like I like to be invisible sometimes, and you can't be invisible when you're a Black person in an Asian country.
yeah, it's annoying. Yeah, if I don't have my social head on that day, it's just
Yeah.
being out in the world is just it's painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I plan to work at Digital Emation for like 2 years, but I just, I taught English for a year, and then I was working at the animation company for another year, and I just like, I'm over it. I can't.
Yeah.
I'm going back to the States.
And that doesn't mean you didn't have great encounters while you were there with people and stuff, like, yeah.
Yeah.
I try to make I was trying to make my mom understand, like when I would come back from a place and be like, I was tired of that. She'd be like, what you got to travel? And I was always trying to like get her to say like, well, it's good for a while,
Yeah.
and then being foreign is not it doesn't feel good all the time.
Yeah.
You need the comfort zone. I like to be in a bubble sometimes, so
yeah. And it's cool, like sometimes it's cool to have an adventure every day because you're not fluent in the language, so you gotta like figure out how to exist every day.
I bet you're gonna retain a lot more Korean for that,
Yeah.
and have be able to pull it out in a quick second and surprise people.
Particularly Korean people who don't expect to speak Korean.
Not expecting that, huh?
What other countries did you live in?
After Roger Rabbit, the people who were Roger Rabbit was produced in a studio in London and a studio in LA, right? So we were in the Touchstone studio in Los Angeles, where Touchstone and Disney were tied together in the property they were on. So we were like technically on Disney's property, but then there was a London studio. Everybody was starting to kind of like, it was pre-internet, I think. Yeah, it was pre-internet, but everyone was starting to kind of know each other a little bit, at least there were people over there that I knew had been over to visit. And I thought, this person's really cool. I've always wanted to go to Europe, whatever. And there was one guy who happened to go to CalArts while I was there. It seemed like we started getting along on Roger Rabbit on the crew, and then he was like, I'm gonna go back see my parents right after production is wrapped. So when production wrapped, I told him I would once we were all done and everything, I didn't have any plans. I said I'll go over there for a month and just hang out for a month, with him, or 3 weeks or whatever in Germany, because his parents were teachers on an army base in Würzburg.
Okay.
And he was like, you know what? I met these guys from the Roger Rabbit crew who were a lot of the crew in London was Europeans, right? The kind of folks who went to like Gobelin, stuff like that. They were, that was the main, like Richard Williams had all them working for them. So all those Richard Williams guys who I thought of as like amazing animators, I was still training to be an animator. Like I was an assistant animator for Bruce on Roger Rabbit. I think Bruce and maybe Matt O'Callahan, but I ended up going over just to hang out with him. I stayed for like a year. We just hung out, met a lot of people, met a lot of different like Canadians, Americans, Africans in Munich, and mainly because they were hiring. When we all looked at like the small little studios, literally like in a house or something, little studios in Germany that were hiring, and a few of those people were at this MS studio, which is on one side of Munich, and I was over at Erk studio on the other side of the city. And it was kind of a party between us because most of us weren't from there, So it was like, hey, are you going out? Of course I'm going out. If you're going out, there's no other social life here. So we would go and like, and just go to all the parties and, find like get like, it's the first time I got to see Prince outside of a stadium or big place, but like some little underground, like happening going on, and I learned what it was like to be African American in a country that has American presence only in military. Right. So there's that, just like in Korea, there's this knowledge of like a certain type of American, right? Who's like nature and nurture. So when you're just there as like a hanging out, like the other Black people I met there that weren't Army were like African models, or like they worked for the like Club Meds and they were like, pretty boys for Club Med or, or something like that. Very different experiences, like super different life backgrounds than me. So, I'm just like fascinated by everybody's life, you know what I mean? All day long. So yeah, that was kind of a fun opportunity, but I got tired of being like, like going out to the farmlands and shit and having the kids be like, can I touch your skin?
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's cool. It was so cute the first time, but like the sixth time, I was like, oh, no, y'all got to get some TV out here or something. Eddie Murphy, anybody?
Right.
But, Duke Ellington, for God's sakes. No, but but I know that I know that a lot of African American artists have gotten a lot of like have gotten some good stuff going on in their lives, like by going over to Europe. So I knew that was in the back of my mind, and like, all right, Europe probably has something to offer. There's something there, the authors that I've read and the musicians I know about, like they found something in France and Germany at times. So I stayed open to it, and I was able to kick it just because of the work. I had a certain amount of that film I wanted to help them finish. I was able to stay for a year, but I was so homesick, man. So homesick.
Yeah.
It's just like, and it was for not much. I mean, our little street in South Central wasn't much. It was just, just regular, just what I knew.
Yeah. Still dynamic.
Right.
What do you feel is the importance of incorporating your culture into projects when given the opportunity?
So it's always been unconsciously or consciously since my very first projects. It's been something that has come forward. As soon as I was given any kind of voice in studios, it was always about, should we get some interns in? Can we do some outreach? How come there's no, how come none of my bosses look like me? Like it was, and I got annoyed with myself at the, early on, because when you're in, your elders tell you, like, you better watch your mouth and be, get in there and make them love you first before you start to open your mouth. And it's like, I don't know, a lot of those things that seemed like they were truths that were bigger than me. They came out as soon as anyone gave me the avenue to do that. I tried to be real assimilated while I was at CalArts. I tried to be as neutral as I could culturally, so I could just be a sponge, and not, again, afraid of scaring people. My high school experience taught me that, like, being tall and Black, you come around the corner, motherfuckers like, heart attack. Like, just calm down,
Just
and so
existing.
I'm just here. And so I got very quiet, I was already introverted. So, but people liked me, and I try to take that away from my, take that with me outside of school. But when I was in the studios, people would talk about these things, and it would be all white people talking about these kinds of things. They would talk about cultural issues, issues of the day, things that were happening, going on. And I started to realize, like, I got my headphones on, I'm pretending not to be here, but I actually have some thoughts.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I actually do have some thoughts. And then talking with other people, going home and talking with my sister and my mom. So, like, I realized, like, oh yeah, it's okay for you to just say what you're thinking, especially at lunch, especially you go away with those people and you're outside the office, it's fine to talk about what you you know, and even just you could hear that certain people had like the capacity to like be way more woke, and you could kind of see if like, oh, if I just nudge them a little bit in that direction, a little bit, and I learned that that's what a tribe is. We're all influencing each other socially to like the best values that we can offer. You know what I mean? And some of them were like, hey, I'm glad you kind of hooked me up to this. You know what I mean? Like I would get a lot in my early days at Disney and Warner Brothers. I'd get like, you're so intelligent. You know, you get that. Like, because you're not aware if you're talking. I assume everybody's smart that I'm, if I'm in a studio setting, I assume they're like, whatever, well-read and kind of things. And I'm almost trying to catch up, because I don't think of myself as that, whatever, I'm not, I don't hear how I talk to people. I don't know, how I come off at all. So it's like, so it's like, I'm just being me. Don't make me uncomfortable. Don't make it weird. Like, cause now I'm gonna be self-conscious every time I come over, and we could have just had.
Like, what else am I supposed to be but intelligent?
Right. Like, well, now I just had it. Now I'm like coming over, talking to you, thinking, now I guess I better act like I did last time I was over here or whatever. Like, I can't tell that fart joke I was gonna tell that I had on my mind because they think I'm so smart, and now I'm supposed to be like this avatar of Black humanity. You know what I mean? I can't just be a fucking person. I'm not perfect. I'm not even good. I'm a dude. I'm just a dude, and I'm aware of what dudes are, and I'm trying to fight the worst of us, and I'm trying to promote the best of us. You know, I'm a privileged human being on the planet Earth, being of the male persuasion. Right? It gives me a certain level of a certain blindness. There are blinders that I would naturally have on, and I'm really curious all the time of what's on the other side of those fucking blinders, because a lot of it will probably have something to do with how I might interact with the people in my life. And it's like ever since I've been like 17, that's been important to me. It's just the way it is. I'm not trying to, there's a lot of labels on stuff now, on things now, social media and shit, about like just trying to think right and have and have like humanity and be like fair to your fellow man and like follow like old principles, like, like, I mean, I grew up in a time when it was like up with people, brothers in arms, hands across the nation. Like, it's corny. That's me though, but now it has a whole other, it's a new thing. That's like the bifurcation between left and right, know, and what one can call the other back and forth. And within the left, it's like what everybody can argue about and call each other, because they all want to seem more better than the other person. So some kind of weird competitiveness and searching for flaws. And I've been reading a lot of history doing how here. History tells me that's what we do. That's just human.
It's kind of interesting, like how, like, even my love for like humanity and just supporting everybody is like automatically political in our country today. Yes. I'm just like, I'm not being political. I'm being a humanitarian, but okay.
Thank you. Yeah. You get it.
Or just being Black be Black is like, it's literally a political statement. Like, having an afro is a political statement, whether you want it to be or not. Like,
oh, that reminds me. Yeah, when I was on Roger, my hair was getting kind of big. I was getting obsessed, and when an artist gets obsessed, they don't pay attention to their own stuff. Like that. Yeah. You have to work on not. I tell my students, you work on not being obsessed all the time, because you're gonna be myopic. But at that time, my hair was fucked up. My lines were all out of. And I didn't care, but somehow having it, they thought of it as an afro, and everybody had to remark on it whenever they saw me. Like, the hair was always the first thing on first topic walking in the room, and oh God, it just made everything so like, really, is it about my parents right now? Like, right? I'm not caring. That shows me I don't care. So let's not talk about it. And, okay, no, I got to go to the barbershop now. All right, this weekend I'm definitely going. But the thing is, like, no matter what you did, it was always like, are you making a statement of some kind?
And think about Black women. Like, I keep my hair short, so there's not that much commentary that can happen. But if you like change your hair all the time, which is just normal in our community, and it's just like, oh, you cut your hair. Oh, you like, no, I didn't. I just took the braids out. Like,
yeah, it's like wearing hats. It's just our way. Yeah, that was the other thing. Is like, I'm glad that because of representation being stronger now, that at least the average person is not as ignorant as to our ways as when I was first coming up in the studios. Like it was, because they're perfectly nice people, very, very intelligent people who otherwise would have been pretty cool to hang out with. They made it awkward and made it so I didn't really feel comfortable. So I'm just going back home. I'm going back to East LA. I'm gonna chill with these folks, you know, like especially the artists out there, you know, the people from the arts community in South Central were just so much easier just to like for us to build together, you know, to build on ideas.
In our industry, it can get really quirky, and so it's just like, I'm opting out of this at this point.
Yeah.
Sometimes you gotta just opt out. Like I don't have the energy for this right now, but I'll
and
come back when I do.
You learn too, you grow though. You evolve though. You'll get better at like getting the best out of like different types of quirks too. You know, like where I used to not be as comfortable with like your straight coder types that would always be in the, you know, basically in tech department, like. Somehow like that little bit of Asperger's or that little bit on the spectrum but somehow I learned to like see something beautiful in these guys at some point, and then I started to like be there more often, like, oh, let's play this game, let's hang out, let's go get drinks. And then it became more of a thing of like, oh nice, now I see what they're doing in my production or in our production, in the whole thing, whatever we're building together, like where their role is and how their personalities might fit into that and work into that, and showing me the connections in that network. Because my productions are like a family network in some way. You know?
I feel like a privilege I have that not a lot of people see as a privilege off on, you know, surface level is having a special needs brother. Is like I don't find things weird that a lot of people who don't have special needs family members find weird, and so I can kind of commune with different types of people more easily because I have a special needs brother. So,
you have a perspective on it.
And I can clock it. I can see, even if, you know, because you can't ask people about that, but like you can see it, and I could be like, oh, okay, that's just what's happening. But not everybody knows what's happening with different, like, you know, neurodivergence or different things that people can have, and it's just like, oh yeah, I see it, and I don't find the person weird.
Yeah. People were very we had a lot of like in my elementary school, like in LA, we had there were 4 people in my class who I would say were would have been, you know, under the label of special needs, and there was a lot of understanding and a lot of compassion around that time with it happened in my classroom. I'm sure that every, you know, class wouldn't have been that, but we you know, it was a good convergence of where they got supported and stuff, and they were, you know, I remember them being over at the house on weekends and stuff too. Just it's a long time ago, but to have those memories, it's like, these guys were part of our community. We were chilling, and it was never really mentioned or talked about any, like there was no labels thrown around, and they weren't like put down upon. I mean, everybody was bagging on each other all the time. And so you either participated in it or you didn't, you know, and then there were certain people you knew that were just too sensitive, you just didn't bag on, you know. So everybody was pretty much being treated like an equal. You know, I mean, there was a kid who you know, who couldn't hear after a certain year of school. He's lost his hearing, and he was pretty good at insults as well. He was right in there on the, you know, in the mix. And I'm glad we were, you know, at least I had that time period, you know, because it wasn't that way in high school, you know. But I'm glad at least at that part of my schooling, it was like, oh, I can see people kind of being cool, like and where it's, you know, it's not virtue signaling, it's not to be cool, it's just because we're all here, like, chilling.
Can you talk about you volunteering for 826 Valencia and why you volunteer?
Oh yeah, I always forget you really do your research. I wish I could have done that longer. When I was when the kind of the economic downturn, which kind of hit the Bay Area before it hit LA. I think the business model. There came a point where Pixar and ILM were the only game in town in the Bay Area, and if you were on projects, you happened to be on projects that were not at those places, your pay rate went down considerably.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took advantage of that. I said, fine, I'm gonna take this time off. I'm gonna just kind of like work on raising my kid. I'm just gonna be here at home and be a house dad as much as possible. And if there's freelance, where if someone calls me who knows me and knows that this is what I'm doing and says, hey, can you do some of this work inside that, and practically make it work, then I would do it, And so I went to kind of the gig model, the freelance model, and it left me Mondays open for the most part. And I was like, all right, let me find a place to put my attention. And 826 had this reputation around our neighborhood, around the Mission, as kind of supporting like the schools, the pre, like say kindergarten to sixth grade, basically, community around the Mission, or all over San Francisco. And I kind of wanted to know more about it. And I went to visit the pirate store and checked it out. And they were like, it's kind of in a real hip, like, area of, I call it Westwood New, because it's like what Westwood was back when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Near Santa Monica. It's, it's like Hipsterville over there. It's the most gentrified part of San Francisco now. And it's, they're on like one street that's still kind of funky, full of like old architecture and stuff. And they're, they moved in just at the start of all of that kind of stuff. But they have their little pirate store set up, and it's real. Yeah. It's a nice gimmick. It's like they have some legit stuff in there, sides of boats, and big crazy ropes everywhere, and it's done up. The art direction is real good. And then when you walk in there, they're all about literature. They're all about how long has it been since you read some Updike or some Zora Neale Hurston, or some, like, look at these book cover posters, like reminding you haven't been in a bookstore for a while and just being like, damn, I need to read, like, because it's amazing. They're good at that, like, doing that whole thing. So anybody who walks in, they're like kind of infusing them with like, reading rocks, it's the best, and and I thought it was kind of a cool energy. I just stayed in touch with them, and they started to put on their online that they were looking for volunteers. I was like, okay, I'll do a Monday slot, and I'll help them do the bookmaking, where I can draw, because I was looking for a way to practice, and I'm not very, very disciplined at heart, so I always have to find outside external things.
Yeah.
Maybe that is discipline, though. Like, I had to build something into my day that makes me practice art, because like playing the violin or the piano or singing or anything, it's gonna go away as you stop doing it, right? Yeah. All of it, right? Again, why I have to keep going back to old software I haven't used for a couple of years and just do something in that software so I can not lose the muscle memory. But yeah, sketching and stuff, and I've never felt like I draw very well. So, I mean, regardless of what anyone says, my inner critic is very hard. So I'm always like, yeah, but I haven't gotten that yet. I haven't figured out this yet. Have you ever drawn a fire engine? Like, no. Then how do you know you can draw one? So I needed something to do, and it seemed like a perfect job to like have artists who have the time go in and like get in front of the kids. Let's create a story together. So it's story time is like you asking questions to the students. Sometimes it's like 2 classrooms from 2 different schools. Maybe they're 3rd graders, sometimes 5th graders. They get to make the story. And as they're making it, each beat of the story, the main beats, you get to draw a little drawing of, a sketch of, right? Nice. At the end of it, they come in, they color your drawings. They do, they get out on tables, and, you finish it up. And we do a bookmaking run where I go in the back, get on the computer and turn it into like a little book. We print them out. So everybody walks away with a copy of their story they created. And it's just such a cool model, right? It's like a cool, so I just kind of fell in love with that. And I wish I could have done it more days, and I could have done it longer. And I'm sure I'll go back at some point, but once work picked up, once like I found it was a little bit more demand for my work than I thought it was. And once Makai got old enough, to where I wasn't going to be at home with him all the time, you know.
Yeah.
I just I kind of had to stop. I didn't have my
Yeah.
Mondays anymore, you know. But it was cool. It was really cool. It was like, think about story and think about drawing, you know, for at least for 2 hours, you know, at least once a week, no matter what else is happening, you know, in your life.
Right.
You know, and yeah, it's good. You just have to build those things in because, you know, yeah, like again, we talk about learning differences and ADHD and whatnot. And I'm always like finding my way through a kind of an ocean of cognitive weirdness to get to my, you know, like I think of things out of order and then I have to reorder them in my head before I communicate, like put them out again. When I see a page of text, my eye goes to the middle first and then starts to go forward and then goes back to the beginning and then goes forward. And my head puts it all together. You know, it's this really roundabout way of processing information.
But you process it.
But I process it. But it happens, you know. So everything is a success. Like, oh, I got through that paper. Success, yay! You know, that just means like if you feel challenged in what the things you're doing, it seems like there's a better feeling at the other end of it when you get something done.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, no, school was like super challenging, but I did okay, you know. It's like it's a confidence booster.
Yeah.
Know? Sure.
So, what are 3 movies you'd recommend to my audience and why?
Well, I've been looking at the work of Satoshi Kon a lot lately, you know, and looking at how I think he uses animation in a beautiful way, and it's cool as hell, right? It's cool as hell on the surface. That's the first thing. Like all his films, Perfect Blue, Paprika, I'd say Tokyo Godfathers, because right now that's particularly like it's not perfect in like the way it depicts in representation, but it talks about something that the city dweller and the country dweller in America is thinking about right now, and which has to do with fairness and civil rights amongst our citizens. You know, don't get me started, but I think that his stuff is really prescient. It talks about consciousness and perception, how we see ourselves and each other in a way that, I mean, like some of the best Pete Docter stuff maybe does that, Inside Out.
Yeah.
I mean, things like The Red Turtle, if you're very like meditative and you're really thoughtful and you're like really introspective, The Red Turtle is like an hour and a half of like really good mescaline or ayahuasca ceremony or something. Like it takes you into these strange places in your own psyche that make you come out of it going, oh wow, I wish I could like write that down and tell somebody else about it. Like it's more than the sum of its parts. It's this simple story about this man and this turtle, and then you come out of it having thought about your entire life. That movie.
Yeah.
There are good short films that do that too, but like those are good movies that do that. What else has been popping off recently that's animated? That new Pinocchio by Guillermo del Toro.
Yep.
From that won the awards last year. Especially, I mean, and watch it more than once. That affects what I would put up as my like top 5 as far as movies go.
Yeah.
Because there's some things more important than entertainment, man. It's wow.
If you could choose an actor to play you in a biopic, who would you pick?
To play myself? Let's see. I guess it wouldn't have to be based on looks. It would probably have to be based on like how they present.
It's your choice.
But
whoever you want.
Yeah, that's a great question, man. I don't know, like maybe Joe Morton.
Ooh, that's a dynamic actor.
Yeah, one of the best. There's probably lesser known actors. I mean, but I end up being like, oh, that guy from the one thing that was in the one movie in the. How about I'm just gonna say Denzel just to be to culturally be in my zone, like where my fandom lies as far as actors goes. My sweet spot ended up being Denzel, probably because of the age I was when I started seeing him rising, but I'd say, if everyone who gets a biopic done about them gets like if Elton John can get Taron Egerton, right, to play him, I can get Mr. Washington playing, or at least, yeah, exactly. Probably him.
Good choice. If someone was producing a documentary about you, what things would you want them to highlight about your life outside of your work in animation?
My life's kind of a mosaic where all the other, there's a main color, which is animation, and then all the other colors of my life are reflections of that, or they ripple off of that or come out of that. Like the community that I built around me that I'm proud of is, people who I used to be colleagues with in animation, like that I met in the animation industry, and kind of supporting and being part of their lives is big. Years ago, when the Mavericks was still up and running, when we were all active, I would have said making our own work for the cons was my favorite thing to do outside of animation, because that was the way we were just thinking about our own ideas, publishing something on paper, whether it's posters, flyers, a book, art book, comic. And it was people from Pixar who were in like other departments where they weren't the real creators, who were supporting artists, or people over at ILM or over at SGI. So we were all just kind of like, or PDI even, artists who were just like, who needed a place to kind of like do their own thing and practice their own thing. And that community of people who were like adjacent to animation, but were trying to do something themselves, but some of them were doing things for the public, they were creating art that was like specifically tied to like some city issue, and they were trying to, or that they were going to do some human outreach involved in doing it or whatever. And like, that was cool. So we had like a lot of things going on. We did fundraisers as well, which we're still prone to doing, but it's harder to organize, and we don't have one building that we're all in. But yeah, we do fundraisers. Like sometimes we've used the Pixar lobby to do like fundraisers for, say, like Miyazaki's Forest. We raised a bunch of money for that. We call all the artists we know, which ends up being 200 people of like various different, from Mike Mignola to Bruce Smith to, everybody's got a kind heart. So they'll give you a sketch, and we'll auction the sketch off live and online. And then we'll take all that money and give it to whoever, and then we've done it for sick members of the Mavericks crew when they've gotten serious illnesses, and like Sho Marase, who recently passed. We do fundraisers for her, where the artists just come out and support. We make those like community events, where we're trying to do something. During the tsunami, we did that for when Haiti went to, cracked apart, and the earthquake shook the hell out of them and basically destroyed that place. So, as soon as our hearts get like hit hard enough, we get together and we organize ourselves. And I don't know how we do it, because I'm so disorganized, but these, those are the things that kind of like were like are still like, when I look back, are still like, because let's face it, in animation, if you're in production a lot, you put way too many hours of your life in it. You don't get to, but I'm hiking. I'm in the outdoors whenever I'm not here. I'm trying to be, usually I'm trying to be with my ex, Allison, and my son, just with those two as a unit, doing stuff in the great outdoors, traveling whenever possible, to try to like, just to try to like shake off my normal reality and see something new, kind of expand my mind a little bit. Taking in, but I've been getting into cooking for the last 3 years, and I get it now. I get why people are hooked on it, and why it's so big, such a mover and shaker in culture right now, cooking and being a cook and thinking about food. And a couple of friends of mine have been working on who are in Inglewood, are working on building a supermarket that will fill in kind of a food desert out
Yeah.
there, the part of Inglewood that they're in. Yeah. And just being like, as an artist, being supporting that kind of stuff and being like on their board and being like the visual person who helps them and, you know, is available for them. And, you know, for that,
Yeah.
there's a jazz festival that I've started being like an art support for, and, you know, that, so like kind of giving like some, putting my talents to like other fields, like of interest is a big thing for me.
Nice.
You know? Yeah, for sure. Even though I still, at the end of the day, I'd still love to be just, you know, animated Grace Mouse Detective or whatever, you know, circumstance, life, ethnicity, experience, you know, reality, the world, you know, has led me to where I am, you know. But deep down, I still feel like I'm a character animator at heart, you know.
Yeah.
But I, you know, just been doing all this other stuff because that's the way it goes.
So where can people follow you if they so choose to?
They can. All right, now look. I am currently working on raising either the funds or the support to revamp my website.
Okay.
I can send people to BigEdBell.com, right? You can see what's there. But yeah, for the purposes of business and so on, I'm having to set up like a merchant website where I can put artwork up and offer classes, you know, offer classes outside of the school I teach at, and, you know, monetize other things. You know, I'm working on finding the support right now because I know that admin wise, I can't even approach it, you know, when I'm in full production on Halpia. So, but I'm really, it's been like, since before the pandemic where I've been putting these things into place, and I've got all the equipment and that's backlog of material, but I need someone to help me, I need someone to either volunteer or to let me pay them to kind of coach me through it, and then get on there and like curate it, you know, and break it out into categories and, you know, what's on there and stuff like that. So just all to say, just a caveat to say that the website will be revamped fairly soon. You know, the fundraising's happening this week to get me that support. So but BigEdBell.com is a good place to go. There's I think there's links in the back there in the info page to a Beyond what's it? Behance, thank you. Adobe Behance page, not Beyonce. Behance. I will. Whoever is kind enough to help me with the website, I'll ask them to update that too. But that's wildly out of date. But you might find something interesting on there. You know, articles or whatever, commercials maybe. I will. I'll post to your email my YouTube page, which has a lot of. Or I'm not my Vimeo page, which has a higher resolution. There's also fake.com. I'm represented for commercials at Fake, which is spelled 2 F's at the beginning, AKE.com. That's an animation studio, virtual animation studio with lots of directors on the roster from lots of different styles. And one of my producers from way back. So yeah, that's where I get, you know, representation for commercials. You can find my personal artwork and illustration work on BigEdBell.com, and you can just once in a while you find me on Instagram at BigEdBell.
Yes.
Oh, also BigEdBell on Facebook too. I always forget to.
Yeah. On the book. So, on the book. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to highlight you. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. It's interesting to hear about your stuff. I want to talk, we'll talk more, because I want to hit you up for some work to actually make some stuff for us in Blender. But, I'm on the Blender team now. I'm believe me, this last year or so, I feel very slow in it, but I'm getting up in there to the point where I'm going to start demonstrating for the class. Like, come on, use this grease pencil. Come on, guys. Right. Youngsters got to get into it if I'm into it.
Right.
But I love it. All right. We'll be in touch. Appreciate you.
Yeah. So to everyone out there, I want you to like So I Know It's Real, comment and tell me how you feel, subscribe to Citadel, and sign up for post notifications to show your zeal, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.